My name is Velma Newton, and I'm the Regional Director of the Impact Justice Project. I was going to call the long name, which is Improve Access to Justice Project, but we're known as Impact Justice. $19.2 million from the Canadian government through the University of the West Indies, and that is where we operate from at the Cave Hill campus. And essentially we're implementing in 5 different areas. We're drafting legislation, assisting governments and the CARICOM Secretariat to draft legislation. We're establishing and expanding legal databases. These are the databases of cases and legislation that lawyers and others use for their legal research. We are working with the attorneys, the bar associations throughout the region to look at issues in which the public is interested, which are their disciplinary procedures, accounting procedures, and codes of ethics. We are also implementing an alternative dispute resolution program under which we are training mediators and arbitrators, and there's also a subcomponent for dealing with difficult youngsters. Now that subcomponent is not yet off the ground, but as of yesterday we would have trained about 40 mediators in Barbados, and these are people who we are hoping will work in communities with persons who have legal issues, well, not legal yet, issues of any kind, which a trained mediator can assist them in solving. And last but not least is this program, the public legal education program, of which this particular event is a part. We have to do all of these projects, subcomponents, what we may call them, in 13 countries. So you can understand that our task is quite a large one. So far, most of what we've done has been in Barbados, because it's easier to start in your home country, and also because we can learn from what happens here, how we should proceed in the other countries. And therefore, this aspect of public legal education, which is to explain what your rights are under the Constitution, we've had this lecture with retired Justice Inniss in 3 communities so far. We started in St. Philip, St. Mark's Community Center. We went to Rockfield Community Center last week, and now we're here in Deacons. And from the numbers and the feedback we get from you, it will assist us in knowing how best to design a community program such as this, so when we move to other countries and as we continue in Barbados. So I now will introduce you retired Justice Leroy Inniss. He has been an outstanding Court of Appeal judge in Barbados. He retired a few years ago, but he was chosen particularly to speak on the Constitution because he's written a couple of books on the subject in simple format that people, the general public can understand. And we felt it would be good to start the series with him, because we know that he will tell you what your rights are under the Constitution, and you will go away knowing what those rights are. So without more ado, I will ask retired Justice Leroy Inniss to speak to you on your rights under the Constitution.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you. Very often when we hear the word Constitution, it comes to our mind some big books and some things that only lawyers can understand, and things that are too high and mighty for ordinary people like us to understand. But the truth, in fact, the Constitution can be put in very simple language, and it is the interest of every citizen not to play a lawyer. You can't know the whole Constitution and know everything about it, but to have some basic ideas as what the Constitution is about and what are your rights under the Constitution. I am sure that when you travel from time to time and you hear people speaking, I am sure you've heard people saying, that is my constitutional right. Have you ever heard that before? That's my constitutional right. You see a young man whose pants is dropping off and almost down to his knees. He said, boy, put up your pants. You can't tell me what to do. That is my constitutional right to wear my pants, so I want to wear it. And everything is somebody's constitutional right. The only problem is that sometimes, if I search the Constitution, I can't find some of these rights that they're talking about. It might be your right, but all rights are not necessarily constitutional rights. Constitutional rights are very special rights. They're rights that are protected by the Constitution. First of all, I should tell you that the Constitution is the most important law of the country. If, for example, Parliament should pass a law, and that law is in conflict with the Constitution, that law would be described as being null, void, and of no effect. Anytime there's a clash between the Constitution and any law, the Constitution must always prevail. The Constitution is the major law, the chief law of the land, and anything else flows from that. Before we became an independent country, young lawyers would learn as law students that the British Parliament could do anything at all it wants to do except make a man a woman or a woman a man. And then you would expand it a bit and say, but that's not quite true. Because they can even make a man a woman and a woman a man. Because if you pass a law in the British Parliament which says, and for the purpose of this law, man means woman, a woman becomes a man for the purpose of that law. So the British Parliament could do anything at all, and whatever it does is correct. Our Parliament does not have that same power. Our Parliament can only pass laws that are in keeping with the Constitution. The Parliament cannot pass a law which is against the Constitution. It has to pass laws which are in keeping with the provisions of the Constitution. As a matter of fact, I can think of at least two occasions when a law was passed in Parliament and when it was challenged in court, the court held that that law was unconstitutional and therefore is not a good law. And if it is not a good law, it means it is a law that cannot be enforced. Now, you just told me about hearing some people talk about their constitutional right. Let me see all those in here who have never spoken about their constitutional right. If you have never spoken your constitutional right, put your hands up. In this whole building, only one or two have never spoken about their constitutional right. Anyhow, let us look at one or two. Can you think of any constitutional right that you have? Anything one. I'm not here to preach this afternoon. You know, maybe go to church tomorrow, the preacher's going to preach, and you have to sit and keep your mouth shut. But today I'm not preaching. We are reasoning together. So let me hear any right at all you think that you have under the Constitution.
Right to liberty.
I heard a voice, but I saw no man or a woman. Quite correct. The right to liberty. What do we mean by the right to liberty? All liberty means is freedom. We have a right to our freedom. And as a result of having that right, you can only have that right taken away from you if you do something to offend against the law. We don't have a case where the police can come and hold you up and say, you know, I believe you'll do something wrong. Let me hold you back a little bit to make sure you don't do something wrong. That can't be done. You have a right to liberty, to your freedom. So you can only lose that freedom if you are convicted by a court which is recognized by the law. So we can't set up any kangaroo court to take away your freedom. You have to be found guilty in a court that is recognized by law. Of course, if you are of unsound mind, again, you can lose your freedom. Because if a person is of unsound mind, he doesn't know what he's doing, and you can't have him running rampant to go and create havoc in the community. So he can be held, provided he's certified as a person of unsound mind. It is also possible to detain a person if it is in the public interest of health. If there's some outbreak, some serious outbreak for health reasons, that can be done. And if you are sent to prison, you can, as I said, you can only be sent for as long as the law allows you to go. A magistrate or judge can't just put you in prison forever and ever, amen. He or she must look to see what the law says as the term of imprisonment that is the maximum which any person can receive. So that is one of the things that you have, your right to personal liberty. Also, you cannot be convicted for something which was not an offense at the time that it was done. So if some new law was passed now to make something a criminal offense, and it was not a criminal offense last month, and you did the same thing last month, you cannot be charged for it now. Because at the time when you did it, it was not a crime. So you remember that as well. You can only be found guilty of something which was a crime at the time that you committed the offense. Another thing to remember is that the police, of course, the police have a right to arrest you. That is why we have a police force. If they can arrest, it will be a waste of time. But when the police arrest you, you have a right to be told why you are being arrested. The police must inform you why you are being arrested. And also, you have a right to a lawyer. Of course, that right does not include having someone pay that lawyer for you. You have a right to a lawyer, but at your own expense. So you know sometimes you have rights, but you can't afford some rights. One of the rights you may not be able to afford is that when you say, I want my lawyer, and when you call the lawyer, you have no money. That's his constitutional right to tell you. When you call your lawyer, you must have money to pay that lawyer. But you do have the right to a lawyer. Again, you have a right not to be exposed to any torture or inhuman treatment. No law enforcement officer can hold you, at least not lawfully, and torture you. Neither can anyone impose any inhuman treatment upon you. There have been some cases in some jurisdictions which have held that hanging was inhuman treatment. That has been held in one or two jurisdictions. We haven't sent anyone to gallows for a long time here in Barbados, but it is still part of our law. As a matter of fact, if you're found guilty of murder, the judge right now has no option but to sentence you to death. So anyone who has been sentenced to death and has not been hanged, it is not because the judge made a mistake. It is just that, for one reason or the other, the state has not been imposing the death penalty at this time. But at any time the state wants to, the death penalty can be imposed. Another right you have under the Constitution is the right not to be deprived of your property. You have property. The government cannot take away your property from you. You have a nice piece of land by the seaside. A government minister cannot decide, oh, that's a lovely place, I would love to live here, and next thing he takes it from you. You have a right to your property. But you're going to notice, I should tell you from now, that all of these rights under the Constitution must carry some kind of limitation. There are some limitations and some restrictions on these various rights. The right is there, but there are certain things that have to be observed or certain circumstances where those rights can be lawfully taken from you. For example, as I just said, you have a right to your personal property, which means it cannot be taken from you. Neither, for example, can the government or anyone else force people to go live in your house. Say, man, you got 3 houses there, not using them, and we have a lot of poor people who walk around without houses. We want people to live in this house. They can't do that. It's not the government's own, it belongs to you. There was a law which was passed some years ago where where Parliament passed a law that you had to register your property if you were a landlord. It was really a means of knowing who had property rented out and who was not paying income tax for that property. So part of the law stated, if a tenant was in your house and did not pay rent, and you put him in court, he did not have to pay. That was forcing you to register your property if you want to collect money from the tenant. Now, this was tested in the court, and the courts held that that was unconstitutional because you were depriving the person of his property. If I take my money, buy a house, and rent it to you, and I don't get any money for my house, money is property. That my property is being taken away from me, and that is against the Constitution of Barbados. But there are 1 or 2 instances where government can take your property. This building that we're in now, this building was built for community purposes, to serve the community. In such a case, if this land belonged to a private citizen and the government thought that this was the best place to put a community center, the government could acquire this land for public purposes. And when they say acquire it, they'll take it over. But they can't take it over without payment. They would have to pay you for your land. They would negotiate a price with you, and if you can't agree, then they would acquire it compulsorily. They'll take it from you compulsorily, but they have to pay, and if you're not satisfied with the payment, you can go to court to say that you're not satisfied with the payment that was being offered. So that would, again, you want to make a road, you want to cut a road, the government has a right to take off some of your land to cut the road, but you must be paid for your land because the Constitution specifically states that you must not be deprived of your property. I'll stop here for a moment for 2 questions.
Yeah, you mentioned about where you are renting a place and you have to register it in order to be able to legally collect rent, as it were, or at least to pursue through a court of law to collect rent. And you said that a case had been brought which
Proof.
had been ruled that that was unconstitutional. So does that mean, therefore, that all of those people who continue to say, including lawyers I've heard, that you must register your property in order to be able to legally collect your rent through the court of law are in fact in error?
So I'm glad you raised that point, that I get an opportunity to clarify it. Right now, the law is that you cannot initiate an action for the collection of rent if your property is not registered. But all you have to do is go and pay a few cents, it's very little. You only have to go and pay the few cents, register your property, and put the person in court. That is something different. What the law that was deemed to be unconstitutional said was, the tenant does not have to pay you. So it's not a matter of going to register late. You're in this house, and it wasn't registered, don't pay him a cent. No, it is not that at all. You register your land even after the event, and you put the person in court, and the person has to pay you. So I'm glad you raised it, that we wouldn't have any misconceptions that have come here misleading you about what the position of law is. That's the one that. Yeah.
The name of that case, you have that case to hand.
I don't have it to hand, but I was just. I would just remind you, the simple is Gulf is the Gulf Rentals.
And Carvalho,
Yeah.
1988.
You see, the professor knows it. You see, Gulf Rentals and somebody called Carvalho, I think. Yes. Yeah.
Another one. Suppose you have a piece of land, it is registered, but no one lives on the land. At that point in time, if somebody comes and just sits on your land, and just sit on the land and build a house, what right do you have as the person that owns that spot, that piece of land?
No,
And how long can they do that?
no, that is going slightly off our topic, but no. But in a nutshell, what it is, that if you have land and you don't use it, and a squatter comes, it does not mean that the government has deprived you of your land. What has happened is that if a person uses land for a long time, over 10 years or so, and he doesn't pay any rent, nobody ever tells him to move or anything like that, what he does, he claims that the land is his. But the true owner can go to court and let the matter be decided by the court. So that is not anything where the state is confiscating your land or anything of the sort. It is that a squatter, if he squats long enough, he puts up a claim to the land, but that claim can be challenged. Yeah. I can't go to all the ins and outs of the rights or wrongs of it, but it's something where if it happens to any of you, you'll see your lawyer and you'll fight it.
Yes, on that subject, in the case of not having to squat on the land, but if your neighbor encroach on the property, what
Now, if your neighbor encroaches on your property, it's a matter to see your lawyer, and that person is really trespassing. The encroachment is a form of trespass, and you can have the court order them to remove the part of the house or wall or what it is that is causing problem.
What's the difference between compulsory acquisition and private treaty?
Okay. The difference between compulsory acquisition and private treaty. If I have a piece of land and you come and speak to me about it and you want to buy it, you and I agree on the price and you pay me what I want for my land, and no one in Barbados can tell me what to sell my land for. That's one of the things that we have to remember. You can sell your land for the best price you can get for it. And we have a private treaty among ourselves. If government wants the same land, government would begin by trying to arrange a private treaty as well. Sell me the land, but if you think that your land is worth gold and the government is not prepared to pay you the gold, then the government goes to Parliament and acquires the land. Yeah.
So the base is usually the value on the land tax.
That is not exactly quite correct.
Okay.
Valuers will come in and value the land. Because sometimes the land tax bill may be too high, sometimes it may be too low. But what you do, you bring in valuers to value the land. But the important point is, the compulsory acquisition is when government and the party cannot agree on the price, that then government will take it, pay a price, which you can challenge at the court. Yeah. All right. We mentioned just now that if you're arrested, you have a right to know what you're arrested for, you have a right to your lawyer, etc., 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 etc. Following on that, as part of your rights to the protection of the law, any case that is brought against you is held in open court. There are no secret courts that nobody knows what is going on inside there. The public must be able to come and listen to cases in open court. Again, and I will repeat this all the time, there are always some exceptions to the rule, always some little restrictions. In matters involving minors, you don't bring the public in. Little children's behavior, you don't want to hear foolish that little children be doing and embarrass people and whatnot. In a preliminary inquiry, this is when you have a serious case. It goes to the magistrate first, and it goes to the magistrate to see if, on the face of it, there's a case made out before you to go before a judge and jury. You aren't allowed to go into that hearing. And one of the reasons is that anyone who is an adult can be called to be a juror. So you can't be in there listening to the preliminary inquiry, and next thing you're pulled out as a juror, and you're going to sit in trial on the same case. So you don't allow people to go to those kinds of inquiries. Again, when you go to court, the state has to bring a case against you. The state has to lead evidence. Your lawyer has a right, or you yourself, there's no lawyer, you have to get a lawyer. If you think you can do it yourself, you do it yourself. But you, either directly or through your lawyer, would have a right to cross-examine the witnesses. You know, some people can stay in their house and make up such a good story that only the Lord can tell you is not true. But you have to put them on witness stand. And you have the right to cross-examine them, ask them questions, trip them up if you can, to prove that they're telling lies. And don't fool yourself, it does happen sometimes. Sometimes people go to court with the biggest lie. And as one magistrate, an old magistrate used to say, the magistrate does not know Bible truth. The magistrate only knows the truth as is presented before him. He is not God, so he doesn't know what is in your heart or your mind. He can only go on the truth as it's presented before him. And some liars can make the truth sound like lies, and can make lies sound like truth. This has nothing to do with the Constitution now, but I can remember a case where a gentleman went to court, and I know he was a liar, because I was right there, he knew the facts of the case, and he gave his evidence in a stern face. He admitted that he had cursed the police because he was not charged for that, and he called the police all kind of bad names because he was not charged for that. And he said he did all those bad things, but he didn't do what the policeman charged him for. And when he was finished the evidence, the judge said, it was a magistrate, the magistrate said, truthful witness. Because he would not believe that an ordinary man in the street would come and admit doing all these cursing police and all these kind of things. And would come and admit that and don't admit something that was just a part of the face. So that is why that you have a right to cross-examine witnesses in the law courts as part of your constitutional right. Another constitutional right that can be.
Just before you want to ask one question.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned something just now that there is no, it's not an offense to curse police.
I didn't say that. I did not say that. As a matter. Just a minute. I am very glad that it's you who thought he said so and not the press. Because tomorrow my headline will be, curse the police at will.
I just reminded what you said.
It's all right.
Because
I'll come to you.
reading in the newspaper something
I know.
that the person was fined for.
No, I'm saying that if I tell you something now, and you'll go and tell somebody else the thing, and by the time it gets to person number 5, it will be completely different. So if you believe that you heard something, that's what you have to do. You raise the point. No. This is when we give you a little story about the man who said curse the police. You remember I told you that you can only be found guilty of something which will be charged. This is what happened. The man parked his car in the wrong place, and the police reported him for parking in the wrong place. But when he went to court, he told the magistrate, yes, the police asked me if that was my car. I told him yes. And the police asked me if it was wrong for that car to be parked there. I told him yes. And I then asked him, why don't you stop confusing decent citizens and go and catch Winston Hall and you damn policemen kind of confuse people. So when he went to court, his story was that his wife had parked the car there. And the police never asked him who parked it. He asked if he knew it was a offense to park it there. And he said his wife had parked it there. And he got a call from the wife, and he went there and drove it away. So when he since he was not charged for cursing the police or anything like that, and he told the magistrate, he told the police all these things, You might as well say, now what man was agree to curse the police? I would tell a lie what park the car. He said,